Hello, everyone, and welcome to I Am Toya Gix podcast. I am because he is. I'm your host, Toya Gix. A little bit about me. I was trafficked for over 7 years by someone we knew, and I knew this person since I was 11 years old, and we all began dating when I was 14. I was trafficked then at 18 years old, and now I work as an advocate and a mentor to youth and young adults who are currently being exploited or trafficked, or who have previously been exploited or trafficked. If you have any questions or would like to know more, please check out my website at divineinterventions.org. Today's podcast, we will be discussing the intersectionality between modern day slavery and slavery. This is just totally a disclaimer. This is not meant to disrespect or dampen down slavery in any way of my ancestors or anyone's trafficking experience. Everyone's experience is different, and I'm just here to state the facts that I know of. This content may even be triggering for some. Please take care of yourself however you may need to. So just a little bit more about my family history of why I am talking about modern day slavery awareness, the intersectionality of human trafficking and slavery. So a little bit about my family is both of my lines are descendants from slavery. My grandmother's mother was mulatto, dark skin, really dark, long, wavy, nice soft hair with blue eyes. Some might have thought she was Indian and Native American. However, she was not. She was mulatto. Again, her eyes were blue like the sky. And then you have, and her father is believed to be someone called Dempsey. So I did a lot of research, and I've been studying African American history for about 10 years now. And then I also did some research on myself for the past 3 years, when I looked up my DNA and things of that nature. And so my great-grandmother is believed to come from the Dempsey brothers, and the Dempsey brothers were an African woman's child that she had by a slave owner's son. And so, and then for my grandfather, on my mother's side, he was actually born free, but his great-grandfather was born a slave. And things of that nature. And then my grandfather he was a sharecropper, which means that he worked in the field. So it's just another level of slavery, to be honest, because they were no longer slaves and things of that nature. But the owners of the land, they had the land, right? And so what do I do with this land that I have? And so I have to have employees, but they would still pay the employees pennies to what the land was worth and things of that nature. So it literally kept them in bondage. For instance, my grandfather, he was a sharecropper, but, he didn't have a farm that he lived on, but, they had to pay rent. And so he would go work on someone else's farm, and then, after that, bring the day's wages into his parents so that they can pay rent, and things of that nature. And then the same goes for my grandmother. She grew up on a farm, actually with her cousin that raised her. That was her mother to her, and they own, they didn't necessarily own the land, but they had a farm on their land, their property that they lived. And so they didn't work on someone else's farm, they worked on their own farm, and they sold bags, bushels of their stuff. And when they sold it, they still had to pay rent, and so they still didn't have much money. And just sidebar, it's just very important for us as African Americans and just people in general to own land and own property, because even though they weren't slaves, and even though they weren't sharecroppers, they still didn't have the best means. But I will say, out of those brothers that did help raise her uncles, they did venture out and have a lot of different properties and things of that nature. And then for my father's side, those are both on my mom's side. And then for my father's side, my great-grandmother Laura came straight from the boat. I say it's straight from Africa. Her name was Laura, but we know that that was not her name that was given to her at birth. Amen. That was the name that was given to her by her slave owners. And so she came here, met a man, got married, had kids, and things of that nature. I don't know to the extent of what happened. She just kind of appeared in Louisiana. My best guess from my research is that she ran, or my, great grandfather took her from the plantation, or maybe he purchased her. And then my grandfather, although he was born free and was like the second or third generation that was born free, he was actually bamboozled into slavery by saying that they had a great job for him in Florida. As a sharecropper, as a farmer, that's what he did. Since he could walk, 5 years old or so. So, when he can till the land, that's what he began to do, is work to bring finances in. And so, he went down there thinking he would have a great job opportunity, and they were like, you try to leave, we're going to kill you, and things of that nature. And then brings it to today, right? My lived experience as a modern day slave. And what does that mean? I was trafficked for over 7 years, like I said already, and that is modern day slavery. And so, again, I am in no way trying to say that, slavery, this slavery and that slavery, who was the better victim or who was it is all bad, to be honest. And it's unfortunate that I still have to talk about it today, to be honest. So how does human trafficking and slavery intersect? Intersect is to share a common area or to overlap. Okay, and so one of the ways I would say, like, recruiting. So, like, for instance, with my grandfather, in his experience, they told him one thing, but it was manipulation, right? When he got there, it was something totally different. And it reminds me when, I was told to recruit girls, and things of that nature. And, I would tell them that, they're coming into this great life. And although a lot of the stuff I told was in truth, it was in partiality, right? It was impartial because I did not explain, that you would get beat on, or, that you may not be able to go home to whomever you want to go home to, or, you may not ever be able to leave this person, and he's a stalker and he's crazy, and, it is what it is, So part of that is deception of the recruiting. And even, in Africa, a lot of people are like, well, what about, the people that got paid, and they paid for slaves to, they got paid to help steal slaves from, the more inner parts of the villages and things of that nature. And what's crazy is I literally come from that inner part of, like, the jungle, literally. The rainforest is primarily a whole part of my DNA. So I literally came from that area. But what makes me have empathy for even the individuals that were getting paid for that is the fact that, I've lived similar experiences. And it wasn't that, that person could have gotten threatened saying, hey, if you don't help me steal these people, although I'm paying you, I'm going to take your daughter, I'm going to rape her, I'm going to take your sons, like, I'm going to take your family. We don't know what situation that person was in, to do these type of things. And similar, in my cases, a lot of times I didn't want to go get nobody I'm like, I don't even like living here. Like, why would I bring somebody here? And it was just like, I did it because I was told to, and I was scared not to, or I was threatened not, if I don't, XYZ was going to happen to me. And, I personally came up with different strategies, and then also I would say, before I talk about me personally, even in labor trafficking, the recruiting and the deception, no telling what the farmer or whomever the labor trafficker, is saying to that victim, to that survivor, of saying, like, hey, you go get this person, you'll go higher in the rank. I'll give you better living quarters. I'll give you better money. I'll give you, better food and things of that nature. And, for me, personally, being sex trafficked, it was, oh, well, if you go, and get this person, your job is going to be much easier. And technically, he was telling the truth. It wasn't a lie, because, by recruiting, I became the head. I became the boss lady. I became the bottom chick, by having others under me, or under him rather. And, it was less on me. It was not always on me to, go drop off this or go do this and go do that. And just for me, also, I wasn't just, sex traffic. I also, was a drug dealer as well. He was one of the top drug dealers in East Oakland. And so, and things of that nature. And so I didn't just, go on the blade or the track and things of that nature. International Boulevard, for those of you that know, East 14th. I went everywhere, because it wasn't just, sex trafficking again. It was a multitude of things. And then even the wages, how, as a slave, you don't get paid, right? Back in the day, they didn't get paid, Yeah, they got living quarters. Yeah, they got things to eat and stuff like that, but they didn't get paid. And, let them not bring in as much, corn or, cotton or whatever they was supposed to, they would get beat, they would get raped. And, even, hey, you can't eat for 3 days, 4 days, and things of that nature. Or I'm cutting off your water supply, right? You guys have a well, and I'm just going to let it run dry because you guys are not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And the same for trafficking, and labor trafficking. Hey, you live here, but you're going to live in a worse place, or I'm not going to feed you today, or I'm going to take away even more of your wages than I already am. And for labor trafficking, and I'm speaking to only the experiences I know of from individuals I know that have a lived experience. And, a lot of it is, hey, I know I pay you a little bit of this already, and, I take from your food plate and things of that nature. And I only, let's say, you're supposed to get $500. I only give you $100 because you already live here and I already feed you and things of that nature. But, you didn't make what you were supposed to make today, so I'm only pay you $50, or you're not going to get anything, right? It's the manipulation, it's the abuse and things of that nature. And same thing with sex trafficking. You might get paid, you might not. The person may give you the money, right? Your trafficker may give you the money when you give it to them, or they may not. They may pay your bills, or they may not. They may say, hey, you gave me this money, but you need to go pay your own bills somewhere else. Figure that out because I'm not going to pay it. It just really just depends on the trafficker and the trafficking situation. Everybody's situation is different. And I could just even think about, there was times where, I would give money and he's like, well, even though I made all this money, whether it was from selling drugs or whatever have you, going to East 14th, making some money, catching some dates, it was like, oh, well, you're not going to eat today. I was like, what? Yeah, you're not going to eat today. You look a little fat. Or you're not going to eat today because I don't want you to eat today. Or you're not going to eat unless you cook your food. If you don't cook your food, you can't eat. You can't go out to eat anymore because people were seeing me out and about. And a lot of people were liking what they seen and was asking, can they have me and things of that nature. And just even some of the recruiting was, just back to recruiting, like even some of his friends would bring over women, and they were either their women or their girls that they had going outside, and he would even pay them for them, right? Because it's like, oh, now I took your girl, so I'm going to give you some dope. I'm going to probably give you 2 zips or something like that, or give you a zip or whatnot. And the zip is 28 ounces of, crack cocaine or, crack or cocaine, one of those, a zip can be also weed, but you get the point. It's 28 grams. And, I'm going to pay you for this girl. Or, when she busts a couple dates, I mean, when she go and get in a few cars, make some money, right? Go on a few dates, I'm going to give you, some of that money. And so even with that type of recruiting, that would go on as well in sex trafficking, and it's like, what? You just paid for this girl. This girl came over, she was your girlfriend, but you mad because she kind of like your friend, but she doesn't really know what your friend has going on. Instead of pulling her to the side saying, hey, this ain't what you want, you going to let her fall and bump her head and be like, see, you shouldn't have left me. And again, on to a more harder subject, and a more triggering subject. And, if you, need to log off, please feel free to do so if you need to stop or fast forward and things of that nature. But the rape, the masters, would rape their slaves, whether male or female. And, even looking more into my history of why, like, one of my great-great-grandfathers had, like, so many children. Like, some, like, lived in his household. And I looked at the document. It was, like, some didn't live in his household. And it was just, like, so confusing. And, what the Lord revealed to me was that he was a buck. And what is a buck? A buck is someone that is really strong and powerful among the slaves, and you use them to mate and fight and things of that nature. But their primary source was to mate with stronger slave women so that they can produce slave children that were stronger. Because if you are a slave, if you have a male that's a slave and a female that's a slave, and they conceive a child, and that child is born while that slave woman is still with you, then that slave child belongs to you. So even if you sell the mother, the child still belongs to you legally, which is crazy in itself, but it was true. And so that's what he did. And so it just, sidebar, it just reminds me of how a lot of people look at the black culture and they're like, oh, so many black men have a lot of kids. And it goes back to eons and eons of generational curses and things of that nature. And nobody has any clue why this young man is having so many children, right? And it's a generational curse of not being faithful to your wife and things of that nature. You may say, what is a generational curse? I'm glad you asked. And sorry, this is totally sidebar, but generational curses are things that come from your lineage from time and time ago, that continues to pop up in your line. And sometimes it's in every generation. I know a family that the mother was on drugs and did crack cocaine, and her mother raised her child, right? And then the daughter grew up and alcoholic, right? Another addiction. And her daughter was then raised by someone else, and her daughter is addicted to marijuana, right? And then they all have these relational dysfunctions as well, right? Generational curses. And so that's what I mean. Some, it's like, oh, the great grandma was raped by the master, right? And in every generation after that, a woman in that lineage, in that daughtership, in that daughterhood, was also raped, right? And so it's just astonishing to find out these things. Like, it goes back so deep and things of that nature. But yeah, and a lot of times they would also have the bucks have sex in front of people, as amusement with the slave woman as well, and things of that nature. They didn't just say, oh yeah, go in the shack and go have a baby, right? Sometimes it was amusement purposes, just like how, sometimes they had the slaves, their strong buck slaves, fight each other for amusement as well, in front of everyone. And so it just kind of reminds me also of, I can't speak to necessarily labor trafficking, but I know in sex trafficking, there were times where, they would either pin us against each other for the girls to fight, and things of that nature. That wasn't in, my stable. Stable is basically kind of like the horses, how they're all lined up and things of that nature, right? That's what they called us. They called us a stable. And so, not necessarily in our stable, but, it was times where we would watch, men pin their women against each other and have them fight. He pinned us against each other in different ways to kind of motivate us to make money and not necessarily fight. He didn't really like that type of toxicity, but he liked it more of the toxicity of the money part, right? And fighting for him, so to speak. And so, and then also, making the girls have sex in front of a bunch of guys, and, then the sex trafficking, right? Making, people have sex with people that they normally wouldn't find attractive or don't want to sleep with, for funding purposes, for money and things of that nature. So it's just, and then also, when just back to, back in the day, slavery, it was, also cases where, hey, I'm a slave owner, I'm a master, and my buddy is in town, right? And I want you to screw my buddy. you're my slave, and so you're going to come from your hut and you're going to come in here, or your cabin, right? And you're going to, screw him for the night. And so also in sex trafficking, that's not everybody's experience, but it is some, right? Oh, my boy, he home from jail. I need you to pleasure him, make him feel like a man again. Or my buddy, he has a lot of money, he has a lot of dope, whatever have you. I need you to, I owe him some money. I need you to clear that debt for me, and things of that nature, which is crazy. But a lot of things happen in the sex trafficking world, in the modern day slavery world, that a lot of people have no clue, that a lot of people don't talk about. And then, my last point I'll be ending on is more so freedom, right? When you're told as a slave, that you're free, right? And then they either hold your papers or they keep you captive, or they never tell you that you're free and you've been free for years, right? And you don't find out till years later, are the slaves that found out and was like, I don't want to leave because I don't know where to go after this. Like, where I'm going to go? All I know how to do is farm and get this, get this stuff for you off your land. I don't know where to go. I don't have no family. I don't know what to do. All I know is you, master, massa, right? That's what they used to say. And, it just reminds me of even in sex trafficking, it's like, okay, either you won't let me go because I'm going to kill you, right? You're like, I'm not going to let you go because you're going to kill, like, I'm going to kill you, so you can't leave. Or it was, you can go free, but I'm going to still kill you. Like, or you go free and I'm going to chase you down the street, right? Or I see you with somebody else and I'm still going to try to hit you or do something crazy to you. Or in my case specifically, there were times where he was like, oh yeah, you're free, you're free to go. I'm good. And, I would have someone say, similar to like the slavery back in the days, like come to me and say, hey, T, you, it's a bounty on your head. You better check in. And I'm like, what? Right. Similar to back in the day, literally, they would put out, poster boards and papers of slaves that are missing, right. And they are free now, or, and things of that nature, like bounty on their head because they're looking for their slave, right? Harriet Tubman, right? They were looking for her, and they called her Moses, right? Similar, it's crazy, and I would be like, and they would be like, yeah, you owe him money. And for me personally, and I'm like, what? I don't owe him no money, right? I ain't, worked for him I don't know how long. What is he talking about? But it was just so he can get my attention and get me to come back home, so to speak. And so he would say, yeah, she owes me some money, and it depends how he felt, just like the slave masters. Sometimes they would send their good old boy that was real nice with the slaves, that can kind of coerce them to come back home by saying sweet nothings to them and just say, hey, come on back. And then there was also this, the workers at the slave plantation that would say that was just the cutthroat ones, right, that would just drag them back home by their hair, right, or drag them, tied to a horse, and dragging them on the ground with a rope and things of that nature. And so similar in the trafficking world, sometimes he had the ruthless guys that would just be like, get in the car to me and take me to him, or he had the ones that, that I was more susceptible to listen to and actually give him a phone call back, and things of that nature. And so, it's crazy how they are very similar and different all at the same time, but they encompass a lot of the same similarities. They intersect, and they are common. They have common areas, and they overlap in a lot of areas and a lot of spaces. And it's quite interesting to find that my great ancestors were slaves, and that I then became a slave to multiple things. And so it goes back to, for me, the generational curses, right? What's in your lineage, what's coming down your pike, what's coming down your row, what was in your past that you have no idea of, that was, in your family that you not of. Like, for instance, a few people have told me I've been called to preach. Well, I don't really know any like preachers in my family. Yes, my grandfather's a reverend, but nobody that's like a pastor or anything like, and things of that nature. But what I found in my research of my history and my lineage was my great grandfather was a pastor. And when he became free, he was, pastoring on the plantation and stuff like that. And he was, a pastor, and he raised his grandson in the church and things of that nature, and would preach to the slaves and all that kind of stuff. And so it just amazes me the things that I found, in my history. And I would say, if you don't know your lineage and you don't know your history, you may not know where you're going in life, and maybe you need to look back so that you can move forward. Look back so that you can push forward. I know I was not a great teenager growing up, and I want to say when I turned 18 and I took those African American history study classes, and I wish they had them in high school, and they didn't, but in my day. But when I went to college, Laney College, I just was so astonished at all the information and all the things I learned, and I really felt like after that point I was like, okay, I had those thoughts, like I need to do something with my life, because so many people have fought to get here, and so many people have paved the way. And literally at the time I was going to school, I was being trafficked, and I was on my way out a few years later, like literally not too long later, and I truly believe it was attending the African American Studies courses that really helped cultivate and change my mind and help me think about my future and what legacy do I want to leave for my children and my children's children, right? I mean, you may say, okay, that was great, but why did you do that today? Like, what was the cause of you doing what you did today? And to be honest, I wanted to bring awareness to all forms of slavery. I know that I was all over the place, and a lot of stuff was different, a lot of stuff was said, but I wanted to honor my ancestors in this month, and I really felt to do it on today, and things of that nature. And I felt to do something to honor my ancestors, and then I also wanted to bring awareness to human trafficking, modern day slavery. It's unfortunate that we're still having these type of talks, but it's here and it's prevalent and it's in our everyday, right? It's seen every day, and whether we choose to look on our street corners or not, or in our hotel rooms or not, or at people's houses or not, it's here and it's prevalent. Modern day slavery awareness, the intersectionality of human trafficking and slavery. It's here, you guys, it's here. And so my call to action would be, if you know someone that has been trafficked or is being trafficked currently, and they would like to be connected to services, right? I would say there's two things you can do. You can have them call the National Human Trafficking Hotline, which is 1-888-373-7888, right? Or you can have them reach out to me at divineinterventions.org. And Divine Interventions is spelled DIVINENTIENTIONZ.org. And I'll be sure to get back to them and connect them to services. So it was a pleasure having you guys with me today. I'm truly, truly excited. I'm so glad that you guys were here with me to celebrate this amazing day of ending Black History Month. It's almost done. We still have 2 more days left, but to God be the glory. So I am your host, Toya Gix. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. Remember to like and subscribe and share. I am Toya Gix. podcast, and I am because he is. Be blessed. Amen.